Imagine a world where superheroes are faced with an alien invasion so powerful, it challenges everything they believe about themselves and humanity. What happens when Earth's mightiest hero discovers the shocking truth about his own origins? And in the face of overwhelming odds, will he stand by humanity or turn against them? This is a story of power, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be human. The global superhero community, along with the rest of humanity, discovered alien life in the worst way possible. Hundreds of spaceships, each a mile long at a minimum, eclipsed the sun over every major metropolitan center on the planet. They appeared without warning, almost like they just blinked into existence, and immediately attempted to hijack any type of communication network available. They obtained full control of every device connected to the internet in less than 10 minutes. On its own, this would be considered an act of war, but blowing up any aircraft that approached their ships made their intentions even more clear, and so the superheroes sprung to action. Every single one of them survived the initial engagement, quickly disposing of the enemy's robots. After all, the heroes had decades of combat experience fighting psychopathic criminals, mad scientists, and kaijus. Their teamwork was at its prime. That didn't help for long, though. Things quickly took a turn for the unexpected when the invaders unleashed their own champions. Merely looking at these aliens brought upon madness on all but the mentally strong. It seemed they naturally radiated a psychic field that affected anyone with superpowers. That didn't stop Earth's strongest hero from rushing forward, though. Ultraman felt his knuckles shatter after punching the leader's green-tentacled face. In the past, he had carried falling airplanes, upheld crumbling buildings, and even shifted a tectonic plate with a stomp. This, however, was an entirely new sensation. Pain. Horrible, crippling pain. Ultraman couldn't process it entirely. Due to his shock, the alien's skull was somehow stronger than every single thing he had ever punched, combined. It didn't even flinch from the attack. "Will you give up now?" asked the alien, hovering across from him. It wore black and purple armor that covered its muscular arms and legs, protecting everything but its slimy, writhing head. And yet, the suit didn't have a propulsion system. Since they were both floating above the city with no assistance, that meant the alien might have similar powers to him. Ultraman threw a kick. The alien easily grabbed his leg and spun him around a few times until throwing him into a skyscraper. Hundreds screamed as debris fell to the street, but Ultraman could do nothing except hear their weeps for the dead. He barely got up on time before the alien appeared in front of him. It could have struck him if it wanted. Instead, it simply said, "Settle down, child. We're not here to fight you." Ultraman lowered his guard a little, then raised it again, still hearing the citizens scrambling for their lives. "You have a strange way of proving it, considering all the people you've already killed. But we haven't injured any of your comrades. Half of them are in a seizure. I understand how it looks from your perspective. You need to understand, though, that they're not doing it out of fear or pain. They're doing it out of ecstasy." Ultraman wrinkled his face in disgust. "And what about those below? Don't you hear their suffering? They're running for their lives just from our scuffle." "Who?" The alien squinted its dark, pupilless eyes out of the building. Then it let out a chuckle, as if wryly amused. "Oh, you mean the rejects?" Ultraman was ready to punch the alien again, even if it accomplished nothing. "Rejects?" The alien nodded. "It's all right. I keep forgetting you're one of those planets. Not everyone enslaves or exterminates them, but you don't have to worry about culling them anymore. In fact, you and your ilk should rejoice. Think of it this way. Your older siblings have finally arrived. We can take it from here." Ultraman couldn't ignore the sense of dread that struck him. He never imagined something this strong existed in the universe. The way it spoke to him, almost as if with kindness, made every cell in his body shiver with warm familiarity, like he could trust it with his life. And yet, how it regarded common people, like vermin, implied a degree of banal carnage that made Ultraman suffer a knot in his stomach. For the first time in his life, he might not be able to stop a villain, and it terrified him to his core. "I see you're confused," said the alien, Allow me to explain. As you know, 40 years ago, a meteor struck your planet and brought you the gift of superpowers. Some called it magic, others blamed radiation, but most people just didn't question it, benefiting from its wonders. In reality, it was a mutagenic pathogen that my species designed millennia ago. We use it whenever we discover intelligent life to facilitate enlightenment. So all my power came from us, yes. Furthermore, it means that, genetically speaking, you're more similar to us than to these humans. That's what you call the rejects, right? What? Ultraman swallowed down his fear. No, that can't be true. Come on, Ultraman, they even call you superhumans. They know you're more than them, and you're the strongest this world has to offer. Deep down, you've known it all along. Compared to the rejects, you're a god. Ultraman clenched his jaw, struggling for words. How did it know his name? Never mind that. It would be so easy to just agree with it. Every instinct in his body screamed with joy at what he was hearing. A lot of his life had been spent thinking in much the same way. As if reading his mind, the alien went on to say, "You feel that way because your body ultimately knows what's good for you. Also, we've been monitoring this planet since the beginning. All the political unrest you've endured by trying to appease your inferiors. Don't you see how weak it has made you? You should be as strong as me by now." Ultraman remembered how much he needed to restrain himself in order to not break everything around him. Something as simple as opening a door required extreme care. On his part, always treating the world as if it were made of cardboard. Even the most patient man would be frustrated by that. "There's no point in fighting it," said the alien. "We're broadcasting this information throughout every medium on your planet. Soon enough, everyone will have a choice to make. Join us, or perish among the rejects." Ultraman lowered his gaze. Millions of people would be tempted by that offer. Tensions between the powered and non-powered were at an all-time high. The aliens might not have to do much of the work themselves. They picked the most opportune time to invade, when society was most divided. That didn't matter, though. Ultraman shrugged off the anxiety and said, "You have no idea what you're getting into." The alien tilted its head, intrigued. "How so?" "It shames me to say I used to think more or less the same. Years ago, I might have even agreed with you. However, no matter how much I hated it, the most dangerous people I faced were often those without power of their own. They always went farther than reason would expect because they never gave up." Ultraman raised his voice, rippling with fighting spirit. "If a damn school teacher can bring me to my knees and humble me, you better believe I'm doing the same thing to your squid-looking ass." The alien couldn't react to what happened next. With newfound strength, Ultraman tackled him out of the shambling building and spiked him into the street. A shockwave rippled throughout the entire city, raining glass as it traveled outwards, the how. Alien remained inside the crater for a few seconds. It couldn't hide its surprise at the sight of its own blood as it recovered from its daze. Ultraman hovered above, beckoning the alien with clenched fists. "You were right about one thing. I forgot how much I was holding back." The alien stood up, dusting itself off. A valiant effort, but Ultraman punched its face 1,000 times in under 2 seconds. The alien's head hadn't gotten any softer. Ultraman just didn't care about the pain anymore. The bones in his hands turned to dust by the time he finished his barrage, but the alien's face had turned into a bloody pulp too. It needed to take him seriously now. They proceeded to have a slugfest that was felt all over the world. Most of the city had been evacuated by now. Unfortunately, Ultraman heard pockets of survivors that were still trapped along the way. He tried to take the fight elsewhere, but the alien quickly discerned his intentions. It then searched for the biggest group of bystanders it could find, and threw a bus at them. Ultraman caught it on time. The bystanders were safe, but they went from confused to horrified when their faces were splattered with blood. The alien had taken advantage of Ultraman's divided attention and punched a hole through his chest. The bystanders ran away with shrieks. To Ultraman's relief, they weren't in danger anymore. The alien didn't seem interested anymore. It simply pulled its arm out of the gaping hole and said, "Fool, you accomplished nothing. They only run towards their doom. Aren't we all?" Ultraman fell on his knees. That's the funny thing about life. Strength flowed out of his body at the same rate that blood escaped it. The closer you are to the end, the more you seem to value it. A tear developed in his eye, and even a few seconds feel like a gift. You could have been one of our greatest warriors. If you had better priorities, you could have even defeated me. Now, your planet has lost its greatest weapon, and for what? Rejects that'll die anyway? No. Ultraman smiled. I regret nothing, the alien snarled, frustrated. Then let me show you reality. It started pressing buttons on one of its bracelets, summoning a holographic live feed of the invasion across the world. Witness the true nature of humans and despair. To both of their surprise, the battles looked completely different from what they expected. Ultraman couldn't believe it. Although the aliens still had the upper hand, even villains had set aside their grievances and worked alongside normal humans and a few heroes all over the globe to oppose the invasion. It seemed like everyone on the planet had chosen their humanity over their powers. Nobody went over to the other side, knowing that Ultraman could die peacefully. The world would keep fighting. This war had only begun. He hadn't been a particularly moral person throughout most of his life. In his youth, he often abused his position in society for personal gain and petty rivalries. He actually believed his powers were the only thing that mattered about him, letting them define him. That his death would be a glorious spectacle where he stopped an unbeatable monster. Now, in his last moments, he couldn't help but feel happy that he had been wrong. By falling in service of others, in relative obscurity with no cameras around, Ultraman discovered that, although he lived like a false god, he died human enough. Now start another story. The first time I met Adam, he didn't seem that remarkable. Just another cadet in a gray Federation uniform waiting quietly in front of my store while his bully sergeant extorted me. Then again, most humans left the same impression on me, given their lack of an exoskeleton or clawed limbs. So maybe that was just my ignorance rearing its ugly head. His skin seemed too soft-looking to take seriously. I couldn't help but underestimate him at the time. Either way, the young man only came to my attention when his superior ordered him to inspect the hangar in the back of my store. I instantly feared for my well-being. They caught me at the worst possible moment. My secret project at the time was a spaceship that could leave orbit and re-enter the atmosphere on its own, built meticulously over the years with cutting-edge parts I had acquired through great effort. Some of them were unregistered due to the means I used to buy them. It didn't have any weapons installed, nor did I intend to change that, but its engine could use a warp core which was more than enough to arouse suspicion. Adam marched inside, with a disciplined gait, the stride of someone who took their job seriously. His hardened expression, with eyes hidden by his helmet's silver visor, sent a shiver down my carapace as he walked past me. An eternity passed while he scanned my workshop. Or at least, it felt that way. The hangar wasn't that big, housing only a dozen disassembled mech suits and empty ship hulls. A long examination meant the cadet was carefully going through everything. In my head, I went over as many excuses and explanations as I could, but none felt good enough to satisfy my tormentor. The Puli, Sergeant Yoruk, was looking for any excuse to charge more for his protection and illegal parts would fit perfectly into that plan if he didn't outright arrest me. Technically speaking, I wasn't in too much trouble since I hadn't assembled the ship yet. Many of the components for the navigation computer were out in the open, though, since I was working on it when they interrupted me. Anyone that stopped for a moment and glanced around the workbench could easily discern what I was doing. Adam would definitely find out my plan if he carried out his task with even a modicum of thoroughness. His visor's scanner should detect the component's origins. By the time the cadet emerged from the workshop, I had already accepted my fate. The human stared directly at me, hinting for a second what I feared, then turned to his sergeant and said, "It's all clear, sir." I almost fainted. "Is that so?" said Sergeant Yorick, studying me with his 3 eyes. I swallowed, keeping my mandible shut. Adam nodded. "We must have gotten a bad tip." He turned to me. "Sorry for wasting your time." Sergeant Yorick made a crooked smile. "Then it appears we have business elsewhere, Cadet." Those open-ended statements of his never finished well for anyone. Sergeant Yorick took delight in toying with his prey. If this was all a ruse to catch me off guard, it worked well. If not, then whoever ratted me out was about to pay dearly for wasting the sergeant's time. His grim laugh as he cracked his 4 knuckles and left my store made that very clear. I ran into the hangar as fast as I could, terrified they might return at any moment, and scrambled to hide the components. None of them were missing. I expected Adam had stolen something, but everything was in its place. That didn't leave me any less stressed, though. It probably meant the young cadet would come back at some point to lord it over me. The next day, I heard Glebe, one of my competitors, had been savagely beaten into a coma by Yorick and his squadron. I almost felt sorry for him. We were the 2 biggest suppliers of mech suit components in this part of the city, but that wasn't good enough for him, so he felt the need to get me in trouble. Little did he know that his failed ploy allowed my business to prosper, since he never recovered from the beating. Some would call that a blessing. Unfortunately, it only brought more scrutiny upon me, since Yorick figured I had more money to lose from then on. Adam returned to my shop at the end of the month with orders to collect Yorick's newly increased protection fee. His demeanor was stiff and distant, like usual, but to my surprise, the human didn't blackmail me over the unregistered parts or charge me more than he should for his trouble. While I transferred the credits, I even wondered if he hadn't noticed my project until hearing him casually ask, "So, why are you building a Class 2 ship?" I blinked, stunned. "It's all right. I'm not telling anyone. Just curious." I don't know what you're talking about." "Right." Adam glanced away. "Sorry." I finished the transaction as quickly as I could. Adam left without saying anything else, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. Why would I tell him anything? I'd have to be an idiot to share a single thing about it. Over the next few months, Adam would be the one who picked up my protection money. He always had a slight frown, almost glaring though not quite, but treated me with a kind sense of professionalism that put me at ease whenever we interacted. I never had to fear for my safety around him, unlike the rest of his comrades. He never even brought up my ship again. Unfortunately, my business suffered a lot, as interplanetary trades in our sector had slowed to a crawl. In an unusual burst of activity, a mysterious entity known as the Pirate King had plundered several shipments. Heading our way, breaking our supply chain, the planet wouldn't receive any new mech suits for at least a year, which left me as one of the few sources of spare components on Junkyard Prime. Sergeant Yorick was ordered to negotiate with me on behalf of the Federation's battle school. They needed more parts for their training mechs, and they wanted them cheap. I refused at first, thinking I had more leverage. The price they demanded was simply too low. Sergeant Yorick quickly gave up on diplomacy, though. He grabbed me by the shell and dragged me out of my store, throwing me face first into a wall at the back end of an alley, with his entire squadron blocking the only exit. I curled up in a ball, quivering. Sergeant Yorick towered over me. "Do we have a deal or not? You're asking me to starve," I pleaded. "Bullshit! I know you're making more than ever. You've taken it all. What more do you want?" Sergeant Yorick paused for a second, then snarled. I shrunk back, only to hear the bully say, "Cadet, take care of him." "Me?" asked Adam, suddenly nervous. "Yes," said Yorick. "You never take part in our beatings. I'd like to see you rough him up a little." Adam pursed his lips, straightening his back. "I'd rather not, sir." Yorick. narrowed his eyes. Adam stayed calm. Yorick slowly walked over to him and wrapped 2 arms over the human's shoulders, tender with care. Now, Cadet, you know I like you. It's why I trust you over everyone else in this squadron. You never take bribes, you don't use excessive force, and you always finish your paperwork on time. All in all, you've never given me a reason to doubt you. But that's the thing. You're too good. We can't rely on you if you can't dirty yourself a little. Adam pursed his lips, unwilling to speak, then said, I'm still not doing it. Yorick tensed his grip around Adam, frowning. This isn't up for debate, understood? Adam sighed. All right, if it has to be this way. Good. Yorick smiled, patting him on the back. Go on then. Adam took a step forward, reluctant. I started whimpering. At my age, I wouldn't be able to regrow any cracks he left on my shell. Adam pulled out his baton. Yorick widened his mouth into a sadistic grin. Adam proceeded to bash Yorick in the face with all his strength. I couldn't believe my eyes. The rest of the squadron reacted the same way, shocked by the human's sudden betrayal. Adam had knocked the bully on his rear and struck him several more times with the baton to keep him down, breaking the sergeant's nose in the process. When the other officers finally interfered, the human started fighting them as well, taking out 2 of them while Yorick moaned on the ground. The remaining cadets had to respect his strength despite outnumbering him. Nobody wanted to be the one getting hit. They circled around Adam, hesitant to engage, but Sergeant Yorick rose to his feet in the meantime, catching the human off guard with a sneak attack. The sucker punch left Adam an easy target for the rest to gang up on, who then proceeded to take turns smacking him with their own batons and stomping on him when he collapsed. I hadn't seen something so gruesome in all my life. When I tried to leave, Sergeant Yorick stopped attacking Adam and forced me to keep watching, laughing as I flinched away from the violence. Adam ended up a broken mess of swollen bruises, torn flesh and exposed bone, gargling in a puddle of his own blood. His eyes had glazed over halfway through the battering, unreactive to everything around him. I couldn't begin to imagine the pain he was in. Is the message clear? Said Sergeant Yorick. The Academy isn't messing around. We will get our components one way or the other. Play nice and you won't end up like him. Okay, I muttered, horrified. You win. Sergeant Yorick and his squadron exited the alley, paying no mind to Adam's twitching body. He was on the verge of death. I wanted to leave. Helping him wouldn't benefit me at all. His vacant eyes forced me to stay, though. He had just refused to attack me and suffered the consequences for it. At the very least, I owed him my aid. Thanks to a clandestine doctor I knew, Adam spent the next day in a rejuvenation tank, healing from his wounds. It cost me a lot of credits, but I tried not to care about it. I was going to be broke soon anyway. After leaving the underground health clinic, we headed to a small empty bar where we had our first real conversation. I bought a bottle of cheap liquor, which humans could thankfully drink as well, and sat at the table farthest into the room, where not even the bartender could hear us. There we had a few drinks in silence. Under dim orbs that emulated candlelight, I noticed Adam had softened his normally stoic demeanor. He didn't have a rigid posture anymore, and without his helmet, his face seemed a lot less fierce, just a pair of tired eyes that were lost in thought. It left me comfortable enough to ask, "Why did you help me?" Adam snapped out of his daze with a weak smile. "I should ask you the same." "You've done it twice, though. I was only paying you back." Adam remained quiet for a moment, embarrassed. "I figured you had some important reason for building the ship. It didn't feel right to take it away." I chuckled. "That's the sad part. I'm far too old to pilot it well, and everyone I've ever cared about is either dead or off-planet. All I have is my store now, and my tinkering hobby. In the end, I just wanted to see if I could build something great." Adam furrowed his brow a bit, leaning forward. "Why? I took a moment to think about my answer, swishing around the liquor in my cup. I don't know. It isn't something I actively gave any thought. Part of it is arrogance. Modern ship designs have stagnated these past 2 centuries, and I feel, no, I know I can do better. And the other part? I looked away. Under normal circumstances, I would never confess this, but the alcohol had already taken its toll on my judgment. It's embarrassing. The idea of sailing the stars on my own ship has been a nice daydream throughout the years. Every time I acquired a new part or worked on the design, I could almost forget about my dreary life. It was never a realistic option, though, and part of me always knew it. I gulped down the rest of my drink. It burned my throat, but it didn't numb my self-loathing as much as I wanted. So no, there wasn't an important reason behind it. You shouldn't have sacrificed yourself for a fool like me. Adam's eyes glistened with the dim light, his gaze full of sudden conviction. Sounds important enough to me. I squinted. Really? Yeah, thanks for sharing. I don't regret my decision one bit. That's unexpected, but it does ease my guilt. Thank you. Adam shrugged. We all have our dreams. It's only natural to protect them. What about you? Adam hung his head, slightly wounded by the question. My bad. Ignore me. No, it's only fair. Mine's just dumb. More than mine? Adam chortled. By far. I poured more liquor into both our cups. Go ahead, I won't judge. Adam raised the cup in gratitude, took a long swig and said, wanted to be a mech pilot, but I guess that's not an option anymore. Ah, I see. The mech battle school was the most prestigious section of the Federation's military academy. Billions of cadets throughout the galaxy applied every year and failed to get in. Only the 99th percentile of applicants were accepted, since the skills required to both pilot and maintain their mech suits were incredibly difficult to learn. Most people chalked it up to talent and never bothered trying, settling for easier specializations. Species with multiple limbs or psionic abilities had an overwhelming advantage, but even that didn't guarantee success. The competition was just too fierce. Once someone graduated and finished serving a few years in the Federation fleet, their piloting license secured them high-paying work for the rest of their lives, whether as wandering mercenaries, bounty hunters, or as part of a planetary defense force. A facility like the Battle School could only be made on an already polluted planet like Junkyard Prime, since their real-life simulations would leave training fields scorched and slightly irradiated. It explained why Adam was so far from his home planet. So what happened? Did you fail the exam? Adam stared into his half-empty cup, wistful. I actually passed. I widened my eyes. Adam made a wry smirk. No need to look that surprised. Sorry. That's amazing. Are you the first human to accomplish this? Yeah. Then what are you going to do? It's not like they've kicked you out, right? It isn't that simple. Yoruk is very influential among the Academy's upper echelon. He actually hand-picked me for his squadron, like he does with many top students, because it lets him blackmail future high-ranking officers into doing favors for him, even after they get their license. Adam sighed. I might as well be expelled. There's no way I'm graduating. I can't help but feel responsible for this. You aren't. I focused so much on my goal that I abandoned everything else in my life, and didn't realize the cost until it was too late. It's all my fault. If I had dedicated myself to cultivating relationships like Yoruk, maybe I wouldn't be stuck in this mess. And now, Adam finished his drink. Well, it doesn't matter. He smiled. At least I made a friend. I tilted my head, confused. For some reason, my neural implant didn't translate the final part. What was that last word? Friend. Must be a human thing. The translator can't give me an equivalent term. Huh, that's strange. Adam scratched his head. thinking. It's sort of like a synonym to companion, but it implies a deeper connection that goes beyond biology, hierarchy, or the circumstances that brought you together. Your success is their success, as are your failures. You see yourself reflected in their motives and struggles, so you do your best to help each other out. Most important of all, though, you stay loyal to them no matter what. That sounds nice. Do all humans share this bond? Adam stifled a laugh. No, far from it. We've been killing each other since the dawn of time. Good friends are by definition hard to find. The reason they're so valuable is because of their rarity. That struck a chord in me. Throughout my life, the galaxy had felt like such a cold, uncaring place that the thought of people being there for each other, without an ulterior motive, made me long for a universe where this was commonplace. I still didn't know how to pronounce the term, but I knew it was something worthwhile. Adam didn't have a place to stay, considering Yorick thought he was dead. So I decided to host him under my roof from that day onwards. His help was incredibly valuable. I'd forgotten how good it felt to have company. Adam could do all the heavy lifting that usually gave me back pain, but more than that, I just enjoyed having someone around. My food replicator wasn't the best, often overheating when I used it for more than one portion, but it still turned out a decent meal when it worked. In the evenings, after closing the store, we would head to the bar and get as drunk as we could afford. The young human was a competent mech technician, so we could go for hours discussing our work. When we could barely stand, the relatively sober one would help the other stumble back home. We traded these roles back and forth. Looking back, I can safely say those days carry some of the fondest memories of my life. This period of tranquility didn't last long, though. Sergeant Yorick showed up to my store a few weeks later, ready to seize over half my inventory. He even paid me a lesser sum of money than we had agreed on. When I realized this, the bully gave me a threatening glare, daring me to speak up. I merely lowered my head. It wasn't in my best interest to argue. Adam had hidden himself inside the cockpit of a disassembled mech, an old RX-22 Assault model. If we weren't careful, Yorick would find him. I needed the sergeant out of the store as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Yorick had other plans. While members of his squadron carried off components, the sergeant noticed a path among the cluttered bolts and wires that led to Adam's hiding spot. I tried to hide my nervousness, but Yorick must have noticed this, asking, "You working on this?" "No, not really." "What a shame." Yorick walked up to the cockpit, inspecting it with a discerning glance. "They really don't make them like this anymore. You can't match that vintage chassis." I nodded along. "Mind if I take it off your hands?" I felt my insides churn. "Oh no, I'm not done with it." Yorick deepened his stare. "I thought you weren't working on it." "Well, not right now since I'm busy." But Yorick rested his heavy hand on my shoulder, lowering his voice. "You're not hiding anything in it, are you? Like more components?" I shook my head. "No, never." "Good, 'cause I'm taking it." I didn't know what to do. Yorick was already ordering his underlings to haul it away. Anything I said would just dig me a deeper hole. There wasn't another option. Adam would understand, right? No, he'd be rightfully disappointed in me. The man already threw away his dream to save me. If our bond was genuine, I needed to prove I could do the same. "Wait," Yorick paused, curious. "Don't take it, please." "Why?" "Because—" I stopped myself from lying, fearing he would notice it. "No, my motive doesn't matter. It simply has sentimental value." "How many credits will it take to leave it alone?" Yorick lit up at the mention of payment. "Oh, I don't know. It would have to be pretty big, considering how much I like it." "Double," I said. "Double my protection fee. Just let me keep it. Can you even afford that?" Not right now, but if you give me a month." Yorick smiled. "Pleasure doing business with you. I don't even know why I let myself do that." The only thing it accomplished was delaying the inevitable. I couldn't afford that amount in a normal month. With half my inventory gone, the goal was impossible. Adam got out of the cockpit when the squadron was finally gone. His saddened face made it clear he heard the deal. Did you have to do that? It's the only thing I could think of at the time. What are you going to do? Give up? Go into hiding? I sighed. No. It's not like I can hide anywhere on Junkyard Prime. Adam widened his eyes with an epiphany. What about your ship? What of it? We could use it to escape this star system. I shook my head. That's not happening. Even if we assemble it before the deadline, we'd still need a warp core for that to be feasible, and those aren't exactly easy to find in the best of times. The supply chain issues have made them non-existent here. What if I could find one? Come on, Adam, be realistic. I'm not kidding. There's a way to do it. And really, what other option do we have? I couldn't argue with that logic. Even if we didn't find a warp core, I'd rather die with my dream project finished than wallow in despair for the rest of my days. That realization quashed my doubts. We went to work as fast as we could. The ship wasn't exactly a conventional design, so it required long hours on our part to get it right. I wouldn't accept anything short of perfection. One mistake would kill us before we left the atmosphere. All the while, Adam made preparations to acquire the warp core. He didn't share the details with me, trying not to worry me, but I could tell he was up to something dangerous. We finished building the ship 2 days before Yoruk's deadline. It was beautiful. A sleek chrome hull with heat-resistant plating, and wings that allowed it to fly both inside an atmosphere and outside in the vacuum of space. It had enough space in the back for cargo and a mighty engine that could let it outspeed most Federation starfighters. Adam hadn't gotten his hands on the warp core yet, but he assured me he would get it done the next day. At that point, I didn't even care how he acquired one. I just wanted to survive. We left for the bar one last time and shared a final bottle before our desperate escape, although it didn't help me catch much sleep that night. The anxiety was just too much to ignore. I only got a few hours of sleep, waking up to the sound of blaring alarms. A state of emergency had just been declared. Apparently, a rogue Federation cadet had sneaked into the military base and stolen a weapon of mass destruction. I didn't need to pry further to know what happened. Adam got the warp core from them. That had been his plan all along. The human didn't have to explain anything when he ran into my store. He carried in his arms a metallic canister with a dark mass floating inside its crystal cylinder. "What the hell did you do?" I asked, baffled. I kinda fucked up. My plan was to leave before they noticed, and I almost did, but I triggered a new security measure before escaping. Great. Adam offered me the canister. We still got a warp core. It doesn't matter. The entire planet is on high alert. They'll shoot us out of the sky the moment they notice. Us. I have another idea. I frowned. Come on, hear me out. These plans of yours have proven to be suspect. We don't have much time. If you don't trust me, you might as well turn me in. I felt tempted for a second, but I couldn't do that to him. Fine. What do you have in mind? Adam went on to quickly explain his plan. I had a hard time buying into it, but the more he elaborated, the more I realized it was our only option. That didn't make it any less painful. I welled up with tears as I watched my ship fly away without me. It would be the last time I ever saw it up close. Adam was piloting it alone. He seemed confident in his scheme. I had to go outside to follow the action with my binoculars. The ship was spotted only a few minutes after it lifted off. No less than 50 security drones gave chase. Due to its warp core, they couldn't pursue it once it left the planet, so they needed to shoot it down before that happened. Eventually, they slowly encircled the ship, and I thought nothing more could be done. That was when I witnessed Adam's true talent. He maneuvered the ship so well that it tricked the drones into crashing against one another, narrowly dodging their energy beams in the process. The Federation had no choice but to send actual fighter pilots after him. Adam handled them perfectly. He flew in a way that gave the appearance of being heavily armed, despite the ship not having any weapons. The Federation pilots didn't engage directly since they weren't aware of this, giving Adam more space to operate. At this rate, the ship would easily leave the planet. I'm proud to say that they couldn't catch up. A combination of its non-standard design, along with its skillful pilot, made it a nightmare to predict. The Federation set up a blockade just outside of orbit. It looked like an impenetrable wall of steel looming over the city. Thousands of drones and starfighters blotted out the sky in an effort to stop the ship. Adam then opened a public transmission and said, "Move the blockade, or I'll activate the warp core." The Federation didn't take that threat lightly. If a warp core was activated while inside a planet's electromagnetic field, it could fry every single electronic device in that part of the hemisphere. The pilot wasn't guaranteed to survive, though. It was all a gamble that very few people would take. The fighter pilots engaged the ship, now with orders to destroy it at all costs. They saw through Adam's subterfuge. The ship couldn't do anything to them without weapons. As they gained on him, Adam made one final announcement. "Thank you, Sergeant Yorok. This is for you." The blockade unleashed dozens of energy beams, exploding the ship in a great ball of purple light. Watching my dream burn up in the sky was hard. Part of me died with it. Thankfully, Adam was there to console me. He had been piloting the ship remotely the entire time. Since he had used Yorok's access codes to steal the warp core and had just credited him for this stunt, the sergeant was now implicated in the most infamous terrorist act in the history of Junkyard Prime. It didn't take long for him to be incarcerated. Nobody could protect him due to the severity of the crime. The following investigation revealed all his racketeering and blackmailing, along with the fact that he had lied about Adam's supposed disappearance. His underlings quickly confessed everything in order to avoid jail time. It all looked as if Yorok had tasked the human with stealing the warp core for him, which we now had in our possession. The Federation assumed it had been destroyed in the explosion, but Adam never actually installed it. The whole thing had been a giant bluff. With Yorok gone, my livelihood wasn't under threat anymore. I could finally build my ship in peace. That wasn't my next project, though. Adam helped me with my dream, and now I had something else in mind to repay his kindness. Since his goal was to be a pilot, I decided to build him the ultimate mech suit, my magnum opus, the Junkyard Angel. It was the first mech suit in the galaxy to operate with a warp core engine. I used everything I learned from my original design to create a mech capable of interstellar travel, even repurposing the scrap metal of my ship to fashion its wings. From then on, Adam traveled the galaxy as a rogue mech pilot, fighting the Federation's corruption wherever he went. The Junkyard Angel was such a powerful machine that Adam could fight an entire battalion on his own and win. Every now and then, Adam visited me in secret to see how I was doing. I'd show him my new ship designs, chastise him for damaging his mech, and drink with him until late in the night, like we did back then. Unfortunately, the years weigh heavily on me, and I fear I won't live to meet him again. I write this final journal entry as my way to immortalize his deeds. It'd be a shame if nobody knew of his crusade. I don't know who will read this. If you've stumbled upon my journal by accident, or while rummaging through my belongings, it means I'm already gone. But since you've gotten this far, allow this old tinkerer to impart one last morsel of wisdom. Humans are not your enemy. They are worth your time. They may not stand out on the surface and even do things that baffle conventional logic, but in my centuries of life, I've never encountered someone who was as loyal, daring, and kind as Adam. Their concept of mutual trust is unique in this cutthroat galaxy and deserves to be known by all. Perhaps Adam was an outlier, and the rest of his species would fall short in comparison, but I suspect the ideals he lived by weren't as rare as he claimed. Adam, if by some stroke of good luck this journal has reached you, I only want you to know one thing. Thank you for being my friend. P.S. I finally learned how to say it.